we're going to talk about controller extension today. All right. So the controller extension is pretty similar to the custom controller. We have seen custom controller, so in which we write a class and then we call the class as a controller for a Visualforce page. Controller extension is also a class, but this class can be called along with an existing controller. Okay. So far we have seen that one Visualforce page will have one controller, either a standard or a custom, right? But controller extension will allow you to have two controllers on the same Visualforce page. Okay, so if you have a Visualforce page which already has a controller and you just want to extend some functionality, so what you can do is you can just create a controller extension and call the controller extension as well on the page. Okay, so as the name suggests, controller extension, this controller extension is a class which is gonna extend the functionality of the controller. Okay, so primarily it is used for extending the functionality of a controller. Can we have everyone in the mute? Everyone on mute, please. Okay, so that is the thing, that it actually extends the functionality of a controller. All right, now um, now then what is the difference between a custom controller and controller extension? See, a custom controller is something which is called on a Visualforce page as the primary controller, right? And a controller extension is called as a what do you call it? Additional controller, correct? So it's not going to be the primary controller for the page. You can already have a primary controller on the page, which can be a standard or a custom controller. Controller extension can extend the functionality, so it can have one or two methods which can be added on top of it, right? Defining the controller extension is pretty similar to the way you define a custom controller. So let's go ahead and create an example so that you get better understanding. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and define a class. Okay, so I'm on the wrong page, wrong login. Okay, so as I said, defining a controller extension, you still have to go ahead and create a class. That's what I'm gonna do. Go to fix classes. New public class extension. Right. Now here, what we are gonna do is we are gonna define our uh, method or variable, whatever. Let's say I just have a string and I'll define a get method for it. Okay, so this is a string. I'm gonna define a get method for this. Hello. Now this is a class. I want to call this class as an extension on a Visualforce page. So let me go ahead and create a Visualforce page. Uh, Let me go to a page which we already have created and which has a controller. Okay, consider this page. This is a standard controller page. If you see on this page, we have called a standard controller, which means it will be able to call only the standard functionalities, right? Now, on this page, if you want some custom functionality also, along with the standard functionalities, you need one or two custom methods to be called. Then you can create your custom controller. So I'll call this class on this page. How do you call the extension? You don't call it as a controller, you call it as an extension. Extension is the name of the class. Extension 1. Okay. Now since you have called this extension, that class has an extension here, you can call the methods from that class also in this page. Which means if I want to call this method get hello, I can call that on that page. See, once I've called it, I'm able to, once I've defined the controller extension, I'm able to call the custom methods as well here. And at the same time, because it's a standard controller, I have the liberty to call the standard methods also on this page. Correct. So primary controller for this page is your account standard controller, right? But since you have called the extension, then the methods in the extension can also be accessed on this page. Correct. So anytime you have a requirement that you want to use a standard controller, but two, three custom methods are required, you can use a controller extension. Controller extension can also be used with a custom controller. So let's say you have already created a page which has a custom controller, and then you want some methods to be called. That's something which you can do with your controller extension. Got it? So for standard controller, you do not, if you're using a standard controller on a page, you anyhow do not have any option of adding your own methods in the standard controller, right? So if you're using a standard controller and you need a few custom methods to be called, then you have to go with a controller extension, right? Second is, if you're using a custom controller and you need a few more methods, here you have the choice. Either you go and add those methods in the custom controller itself, or you create a controller extension and put those methods there, right? So that's going to be a call from you. Which one would you prefer? All right. Now, let me know if there is any difficulty understanding this. When you're creating a Visualforce page, you have different you know, ways of getting the logics into the Visualforce page. That's what we have discussed earlier. We have standard controller, we have standard list controller, we have custom controller, and we have controller extension. Okay, right. So I want you guys to tell me one by one. When would you use a standard controller? Now we know all four controllers. When would you use a standard controller? What kind of a requirement you have? You will decide to use a standard controller.
To change the look and feel of the page.
To change the look and feel of the page. Okay. Anyone else?
To
To display
use
only
standard functionality.
To use standard functionalities. Okay. Anything else?
standard functionality with single
Is there
line.
some restriction with a standard controller? Does it work with some restriction?
Uh, we need to pass the ID.
Okay. We need to pass the ID, which means what?
ID of the record
No,
in the
yeah,
URL.
I understand that. I'm saying which means that on one page you can display details of one record, right? So you use a standard controller when you want to design a page for a single record, single detail record, and you want to more or less use the functionalities of the standard Salesforce pages. You're not willing to create your own logics. You think that existing Salesforce logics are enough, you can go ahead with a standard controller, right? Now think about it. If you decide on this that existing logics are absolutely fine, I will use standard controller for a single record, and all of a sudden you realize that there is one more functionality which is required. What will you do?
We
Your
go for
entire page,
controller extension.
yes. So your entire page is ready. You're almost there, and you see that just for one functionality, I need some custom logic written. I need some epics written for this one particular small thing. What will you do? It doesn't make sense to actually go ahead and write a complete custom controller, because if you write custom controller, what is the problem? In custom controller will not recognize any of the standard functionality, which means everything you have to write from your side. You have to run the SOQL query, this, that, all that stuff, which is actually too much of programming. So until and unless it's not required, why to go in that, right? Okay. Same thing goes with standard list controller. Now, when will you use standard list controller? Anyone? When should we use standard list controller?
To display many records at a time.
So display list of records. Standard
Yeah.
functionalities, but display list of records, right? Same thing is applicable in case you have created a complete list page with standard list controller and you need one functionality or couple of functionalities, and you don't feel like going and creating custom controllers, you can use a controller extension. Okay, the reason can be anything. Now, when will you use custom controller? When custom
But
controller is ideal to be used?
to define our own functionality.
To, sorry?
When we need to create our own pages, we use custom controllers.
Own functions, own methods, your own logics, right?
Yeah.
So when you see that majority of the logic on the page is going to be, custom defined, then it makes sense for you to go and create a custom controller. Then it does not make sense to stick to the standard controller. So if you feel that there is only one thing which I can use from standard controller page or standard controller class, and most of the things I have to define, then better go for a custom controller, right? Second is a standard controller. If you see, a standard controller does not allow you to do whatever you want to do, right? So the standard controller will not allow you to show data from any object or from anywhere, and uh, put the kind of filters or put the kind of like search buttons that we did. So those things are not available with the standard controller. So any functionality which is not a part of the standard controller, if I need those functionalities, then obviously it makes sense for me to go ahead and create a custom controller. All right. Okay. So now, in case you have created a custom controller, you have designed a page, it's working absolutely fine. And now you realize that you have some additional logics to be put on that particular page. My custom controller page is ready, the logics are there, everything is working fine. But all of a sudden, the client comes up with one additional requirement, says, okay, fine, I want this to do this small thing also. And now if you're not willing to make changes to the existing custom controller because you don't want to make changes into something which is already working fine. So what is the option that you have now? The controller extension again. Because if my primary custom controller has all the methods, in custom controller you have the option that one additional logic which is required, you can go ahead and put it in the custom controller itself. But sometimes we don't do that because once we see that the already uh, the controller or the logic which has been executed, it's working fine, and it's a pretty big class, and you actually don't want to get into that to make changes. You feel that, okay, fine, let me just add an extension and provide the functionality. That's it. Let me not actually go ahead and make changes into the actual controller. Right. So that their controller extension can be used. Right. So a controller extension is primarily always used with one of these controllers. It is not going to be used standalone. You cannot use a controller extension only. Extension has to be used with some other controller. Right. Now, so we have understood, four different types of controller. Now coming to how do you access your Visual Force pages? We have been talking about creating the Visual Force pages from different angles. Now, how will our end users access the Visual Force page? That's the important part here. Pranav,
Yeah.
the microphone is fine. It can be muted.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, good. Okay. So we have been creating visual force pages. Now we also need to understand how my end users are going to access the visual force page. So there are several ways actually of accessing the visual force page. Right. So you have the option of pointing to the visual force page. That's basically what we are going to talk about. How will my end users point to the visual force page? How will they reach the visual force page? Okay. Though we have, you know, we have seen that we always go into the URL and we type the page name, but my end user will not know V9 or V12 or V13 is the end user going to remember that? Obviously, no. He will not know that. He will not remember the name of the page. So how does he actually gets into the visual force page? Okay, so the first option that we have is is overriding the standard page. So what you can do is, this is as simple as it sounds. All that you have to do is you just have to override the standard page. Okay, so you have a lot of standard pages. If you create a visual force page and you want to use the visual force page instead of the standard page, you just need to go ahead and override the standard page with the visual force page. Okay. So as you can see here, your visual force page can function as a replacement to the standard detail page for an account, or for that matter for any object. Okay. You can modify the standard user interface generated by platform to ensure that your page gets shown instead of the standard page. Alright. So what you can do is, instead of the standard page, you can use the visual force page. How will we do that? Currently, for account, this is the page which opens. If I click on an account record, I have a standard account page, and this is how it looks, right? This is what opens. You have the option of replacing this page with your visual force page, so that anyone opens an account, any person goes and clicks on a record, the record will not open in the standard layout, it will open in the visual force page format. So let me see. Okay, that's at the tab page V7. Okay, I will use this page to override the standard page. Instead of a standard page, I want this page to open. Alright. So how do you do that? It's pretty simple. You just have to go to setup, and then it's a page for accounts. So you should go to customize accounts. Here you have to click on buttons, links, and actions. If you click on buttons, links, and actions, you will see that all the buttons which are associated with account are listed here. New, edit, delete. So one object has a lot of pages. There's a new page, there is an edit page, there is a list page, there is a delete page, right? And then on top of that, there's a view page. Okay, so view page is what we want to change. View page is basically the page on which you view the details of the record. So this is what I want to change. So all that I have to go, and currently this view page is using standard salesforce.com page. You just have to go and click on edit. Currently it's a no override. You have to use a visual force page here. What's the name of my visual force page? V7. That's it. Click on save. Now in the view page, we have assigned the visual force page, which means if you go and click on any record, the record is going to open in the visual force page format. Got it? So now you open any record, you open Express Logistics, it's going to open in visual force page format. Correct. So instead of the standard page, your end user will get to see the Visualforce page. So your visual user does not have to remember the page name. It does not have to remember the ID. So I know a lot of you had concerns that are we going to supply the ID now. Now from the link itself, it's going to pick the ID automatically. You just have to go and click on the call. Right? Okay. So that's one way. So the same way you can actually override any standard page. Okay. Just that you have to make sure that you have created the correct kind of page for it. Okay. Second option is now. First option was replacing the complete this complete standard page and bringing a visual force page in place of the standard page. Okay. Second option is embed a page into a standard layout. If you don't want to replace the complete standard page, but you just want to embed visual force page inside the standard layout, that can also be done. So you want to retain your standard page and you can also embed the visual force page into that. All right. So what you can do is instead of replacing, sometimes you might feel that okay, I want to keep the standard layout, but inside the standard layout, I just want to embed the visual forces. So that's the second option that we have. How will you embed? So I'll go with the same account page. Let me just take it back to the standard page now and embed the page. Sorry, on this page. So I'll just again go to the same page. I'll make it no override so that it goes back to the standard page. And instead of replacing this time, I'm going to embed it. So for embedding the visual force page into the standard page, all that you have to do, you just have to go to the page layout. Okay, then you don't need to go to button links and actions. Go to the page layout, click on edit, whichever page layout you're using, just click on edit. And on this page layout, you will see at the top left here, you have an option of visual force pages. Got it? Now it's just a drag and drop. You can drag and bring the visual force page inside your standard page. Create a section. See, in this case, what I've done is I've embedded the visual force page inside the standard layout. So my page is going to show the visual force page as well as the standard layout. Okay, using V6 here, you can save. Now, if someone opens the standard page, they will see visual force page embedded into it. See, your visual force page part is embedded into this. Okay, and after that, your standard page thing starts. Okay, so you have the option of embedding a visual force page into the standard page also. So if you want to retain the standard page but embed a visual force page inside that, that can also be done. That's the second option. The third option is you can always create a button that can connect a link to a visual force page. Okay, so we are basically talking about creating a custom button. On the page layout, you would see that there is an option called custom button. You see there is a space for custom buttons here on your page layout. So you have the option of creating a button here which can take you to the Visualforce page. Okay, so for example, let's just think of a scenario. We took two scenarios. One, I said I want to completely replace the standard page. I don't want to see the standard page. I just want to see the Visualforce page. So the first option was okay, override. Second option was the end user says I want the Visualforce page to be embedded inside the standard page. So we could actually put it into the page layout. Third scenario can be the user says that show me the standard page, but I should have the option of viewing the record in a Visualforce page format also. Okay. Let's say now my end user says that I want to see the record in the standard page format, but give me an option to switch the view to the Visualforce format also. In that case, you can work with a button. So what we are going to do, I'm going to remove this embedded thing also from here. So now the view is the normal standard view. Yeah, the generic view that you get. But the end user wants that to switch to the Visualforce view and wants an option to switch to the Visualforce view. So what we can do, we can create a custom button here. So by default, the user will come to this page. If he clicks on that custom button, he will be taken to the Visualforce page. Okay. How will you do that? So for that, we have to create a custom button. Where do you create a custom button? Again, the same. Under account, buttons, links, and actions. In buttons, links, and actions, you have to click on new button or link. Call it tab view. Okay, name of the button and the label of the button. It's a detail page button. Okay, so it's a button which will take you to detail page. Okay. What is the source for this button? A Visualforce page. Which Visualforce page? V7. Fine. Now behavior is basically where do you want the other page to open? When I click on the button, the V7 page, where should it open? You want it to open in a new window or you want it to open in the existing window with sidebar? So you have the choice and then you click on save. So you have created a button which will open V7. Save. The new custom button will not be displayed to users until you add it to the page layout. So I'm just creating the button right now. The next thing that I have to do is I have to add it to the page layout. Otherwise end users will not get to see the button. So my button is ready. Then I have to go to the page layout. Okay, edit the page layout again and get the buttons. This is a tab view button, right? This is the button which I created. Drag and bring it here in the custom buttons. Right. Done. Save it. See. Now this is a custom button. By default, it opens in the standard page format. When you click on the tab view, it will show you the tab view for the record. And the record is displayed in the tab view format, and that's the name that I've given. But primarily, what it has done is it has transferred to the Visualforce page. Got it? It has got transferred from your standard page to Visualforce page, right? So that's how a custom button can work, right? Apart from this custom button option, there's one more option that we have. So we have seen three things: override, embed, then access Visualforce page through a custom button. Okay. Apart from this, there's one more option. You can also create a tab for your Visualforce page. Alright. But creating a tab for Visualforce page, you cannot create a tab for standard controller pages because standard controller page always requires an ID. Clicking on a tab will not supply the ID. So tab can be created for standard list controller or custom controller pages. Got it? So I can also create a tab. For example, if you think of the scenario that we did yesterday, we created a search layout kind of thing, right? V20. Now I can create a tab for this particular page. So end users can actually go to click on that tab to access this page, and from here they can search. It's pretty simple creating a tab. All that you need to do is the way you create a tab for custom object, pretty similar to that. You just need to go to setup, create tabs, and in the tabs you have an option of Visualforce tabs. Say Visualforce tabs, click on new, B20, right? Call it search UI. Pick a tab style the way you pick for custom objects. Go to next. Okay. So my search UI tab is created, right? So for my end users, I've created a tab called search UI, and they can actually click on this and access the search UI, right? So now they don't need to actually remember the name of the page. So for this kind of pages, which are more of a generic kind of page, you can create tabs also, right? But for the pages which need the record ID and all, for those pages, you have to either override or embed or access them through the custom button, all right? So that they can get the IDs, all right?